Hey YouTube, I want to show you something that's another phase of doing metal work. Now this black piece of metal that has POR 15 on it sets behind the actual fender on this. So this is 2 layers of metal. Now what I'm after here this morning is I want to make this fit there pretty well. Now I had laid a piece of paper over here, marked it, and you can actually, if you tape paper on here and leave the paper hang down, the dirt that's on your hands from working can actually make a nice mark and a pattern for you. So basically I've done that already, and I've pulled out this pattern here. Okay? So what I want to do now is I want to make sure that this thing is going to fit real well. What I'm mainly interested in is this point here, so that where this body line comes down, it ends up where my point is. So I'm trying to fit this to see where that's going to happen. So right there's where the point is, and I can see that this metal, I mean it's on the bottom here, the bottom part is okay. This point isn't bad, it's a little high, but over in here we're pretty far out to the one side. In other words, we're overlapping one of the other pieces. So let me put that in there again. So we're going to put the bottom one. We're getting the bottom. We want to line up that point because that's an important part. And then we're just going to run a Sharpie, and you can use a pencil if you've got good eyes. And you can see how much of this is actually this is overlapping. Now it's not to the black line, it's actually right to where the edge of my finger is, so it's not a whole lot. So what you want to do, and you can do this in woodwork or any kind of work, I'm actually putting a line of ink along this side just to give me a guide so that I know. Let me put this cap on this Sharpie to dry up quick, just so I know roughly where I need to grind. Okay, so then what I do is I take the grinder with the grindstone now, not the thin blade. If you use a thin blade, the problem with the thin blades is that they're liable to shatter. So you want to take the heavy grinding blade, and what I'm doing here is I'm just working along that line. I'm looking at the line. I'm going to take about half that ink line off of it. You want to keep the machine moving. So keep an eye on the ink. You only want to take about half the line off there. It's not going to take much to do that. Now as you're grinding, you want to just rub the edge of that so that you can keep the burrs that roll over from the grinding from getting in your way. Alright, so there's my top, and my bottom's okay there. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I can now see a little bit past the ink line, but I'm not far enough yet, so I've got to take a little bit more off of here. Again, I'm fitting it in the bottom here where I want it to be and lining the top up. And you can see that it's still, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's not flush there. This piece is still a little bit higher, but I'm seeing a substantial amount of the metal there. Now at the bottom it's okay. It's actually right in this middle section here where there's actually a wider line there. I think you might be able to see that. that has to be ground off. So now you can see that that's very, very close there. I mean, it's touching the other metal. So that's not too bad, okay? So now the top is hitting a little bit. So let me line that up. And if you don't have any tension on the piece while you're working with it, you can use a magnet to help you. Magnets from a speaker. So I'm going to just put a line above here, right against there. I'm pushing it in sort of, so it gets along where the edge of the metal is. And then I'm going to look at that again. Now, you can see, let me just bring the camera over here a little bit closer. You can see that below the line, there's some metal there. So that's about how much metal I have to take off of the piece that I'm working with. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Sharpie, and again, you can use anything you want. You could put a piece of tape on here. In fact, I'll show you that way. I actually like using the tape anyway. So you can take a piece of tape, and you can roughly eyeball that. If you want to measure it, you can measure it. But I'm going to put that along here about the same distance that I need to grind down. Okay? So what you're looking at there is what I have to grind here is about what's left on that. And what's nice about the tape is it shows up as you're grinding how close you get, and it's, with that bright green color or yellow color, it really shows up good. You can see where you're grinding. Right by the edge of the tape there to compare the difference. And you're just taking your time with it. Now if you can't hold it too well, put it in a vise or something to do this grinding. I've done this pretty much already, so I'm pretty much just leaning it against my leg and hanging on. This is a good way. I actually like this way better than using a pencil or a Sharpie. I like this way better than using a Sharpie. The only thing is it takes longer to put the tape on. So I'm going to take this tape back off of here now so that I can see what I have as far as the metal goes. So again, I'm starting at the bottom there. I want to fit this side I know is good. And if you see there, I'm slightly below that. And this is a little bit of a rougher cut here. I could have had this a little smoother, but it's a little rough. And there's some tack welds underneath it that's keeping it from laying totally flat, which I want to take off. So that piece is not bad. Looks like it might need a little bit out of right here yet in the middle. So I'm going to take some of that out yet. Now I'm going to just eyeball that. Yeah, that's not looking bad. I like that. Not too bad at all. And this very bottom corner, this is good on this side, but on that side it's on top of the other metal. So I don't want to go too far, and sometimes when you have a small edge like that and you're concentrating on one spot, the next thing you know you've gone too far. So I'm just marking it where I want to grind it roughly and telling myself it's on this side. Okay, so that's fitting in there pretty well. Now the other thing here is along this Jeep, along this edge here, this metal, I don't know if you can see up there, I hope you can see this, it looks like it's about 3/16 away from the fender, the metal. So I'm okay up here, but down in here I'm actually touching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ride on the fender, I'm riding on the fender, and I just want to put some mark there of how far in I can go. Now I'm not going to go as far as where you see that mark, okay, but I'm going to get close to it, and I'm going to keep the grinder moving so I end up with a nice curve. If when you're pushing the grinder it's digging in, you know you're on too hard of an angle. In other words, you're this way too hard. You want this to float over that. You're almost touching both pieces to make a nice curve. Run your finger over that, you don't want to feel any burrs or anything on there. This magnet isn't bad from a speaker, but I'll tell you what, the best magnets are in hard drives. You take a hard drive apart, the actual hard disk itself has a magnet there. Man, their magnets are really good. Alright, so I'm not looking too bad. I want to take a little bit more down here. And it looks like a little bit up here. The curve itself isn't too bad, but even if I take a little more off, it's not going to matter because it's, like I say, it's about 3/16. So on this one again, I'll use the tape, and I'm going to start roughly how much I need to take off down there, which is about 3/16. I'm pulling tight on the tape, just lightly pressuring it down as I go so that I can bend it nice and give myself a nice curve there. And now you can see where, let me take a look at this once. Yeah, that gives me I like the tape actually looks good compared to the fender. So I'm going to take it closer to the tape now. You want to watch yourself because you can get this thing pretty hot when you're working with it, especially if if you're out in the sun, it really tends to get pretty warm. Okay, so now you can see there's a nice curve there that's going to go with this part of the fender. Maybe the bottom here a little bit, yeah, right at the very bottom, so that I can, it'll make it easier for me to make this return here and blend into this other metal. Yeah, just take a little bit off of it, yeah. Now you can see I didn't go as far as the tape is. I was using the tape as a guide, and I'm looking at that and I'm seeing I have about the same distance all the way along there. Now there's a little bit of a burr on here that I can feel with my thumb when I go over that, so I want to make sure I get that out of there as well. Yeah, so that's how you would grind that, okay, to fit into your hole. Now, the more you take your time with this and the more practice you get at this, you'll find out that you can do pretty good pieces. Again, this is a little rough up here because I was welding underneath it and the heat sort of melted some of the metal here and there. This side here is very good and I'll be able to weld that easily. What I'm going to do over on this side is, because the weld doesn't show up on the body on the opposite side, I'm going to drill a couple holes in here and then I'll spot weld that against there. I'll put a little bit of seam sealer in there, force it in and then wipe it back out so it's just in against the body panel. And then I'll weld it before I put the seam seal in now. So guys, that's basically how you grind a piece to fit. And you do need to make a little bit of a pattern, like I say. So it's really not that hard once you do it a couple of times. It tends to work out pretty easily, but like I say, you can use the tape, you can use a pen, you can use a pencil. You can go by eye if you got a good eye and you're steady. So have a good one, guys.